The bell rang, signaling the start of another monotonous day at Ridgewood High. The hallways buzzed with the usual chaos: lockers slamming, sneakers squeaking on polished floors, and the occasional burst of laughter or shouting. But today was different. Today, something or someone was about to shake the very foundation of this ordinary high school. At the center of it all was Emily Carter, a 16-year-old junior with perfectly curled blonde hair, designer jeans, and an air of entitlement that could fill a stadium. Emily was the queen bee of Ridgewood, and she knew it. She ruled the school with her sharp tongue and her clique of loyal followers. To her, high school was a stage, and she was the star. But stars don't like competition. The whispers started before the first period. "Did you hear? There's a new girl." "Yeah, I saw her in the office. She's different." "Different how?" "You'll see." Emily overheard the chatter as she strutted down the hallway, her best friend Jessica trailing behind her like a shadow. "New girl?" Emily scoffed, flipping her hair. "What's so special about her? Probably another nobody trying to fit in." Jessica giggled. "You should totally mess with her. You know, just to see if she can handle it." Emily smirked. "Oh, I will. It's practically my duty to test the newbies." Little did Emily know, this newbie was about to change everything. The new girl's name was Aaliyah Johnson. She walked into Mrs. Thompson's English class with her head held high, her dark curls bouncing with every step. Her skin was a rich, deep brown, and her eyes sparkled with a quiet confidence that immediately set her apart. She wore a simple outfit, a white hoodie and jeans, but she carried herself like she owned the room. Mrs. Thompson smiled warmly. "Class, we have a new student joining us today. This is Aaliyah Johnson. Let's make her feel welcome." The room erupted into polite applause, but Emily rolled her eyes. "Welcome to Ridgewood," she muttered under her breath, loud enough for Aaliyah to hear. "Good luck surviving." Aaliyah's eyes flicked toward Emily, but she didn't respond. Instead, she took her seat at the front of the class, pulled out a notebook, and began writing as if nothing had happened. Emily wasn't used to being ignored. It pissed her off. The bullying started small. A snide comment here, a mocking laugh there. Emily made sure Aaliyah knew her place. "Nice hoodie," Emily sneered in the hallway after class. "Did you get it from the clearance rack?" Aaliyah kept walking, but Emily wasn't done. She stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "I'm talking to you. Don't you know it's rude to ignore people?" Aaliyah stopped and looked Emily straight in the eye. "I don't have time for this," she said calmly. "Move." Emily's jaw dropped. No one talked to her like that. "Excuse me? Who do you think you are?" "Someone who doesn't care about your opinion," Aaliyah replied, stepping around her and continuing down the hall. Emily stood there, fuming. Jessica appeared at her side. "Wow, she's got some nerve." "Yeah," Emily said, her voice low and dangerous. "But she's about to learn what happens when you mess with me." The next day, Emily escalated her attacks. She spread rumors about Aaliyah, saying she was a troublemaker who got kicked out of her last school. She accidentally bumped into her in the cafeteria, spilling Aaliyah's tray of food all over the floor. "Oops," Emily said with a fake smile. "My bad." Aaliyah didn't react. She simply cleaned up the mess and walked away, her expression unreadable. But Emily wasn't satisfied. She wanted a reaction. She wanted to break her. The final straw came during gym class. The students were playing basketball, and Aaliyah was dominating the court. She was fast, agile, and clearly had skills. Emily, on the other hand, was struggling to keep up. Every time she tried to block Aaliyah, she failed miserably. Frustrated and humiliated, Emily decided to play dirty. As Aaliyah went for a layup, Emily stuck out her foot, tripping her. Aaliyah hit the ground hard, the sound of her skin scraping against the court echoing through the gym. The room fell silent. Aaliyah sat up slowly, her knee bleeding. She looked at Emily, her eyes blazing with anger. But before she could say anything, the gym teacher blew the whistle. "Enough! Emily, what was that?" Emily shrugged. "It was an accident. She shouldn't have been in my way." Aaliyah stood up, her voice steady but firm. "It wasn't an accident. You tripped me on purpose." Emily laughed. "Oh, please. Like anyone's going to believe you." But Aaliyah wasn't backing down. "We'll see about that." That afternoon, Emily was called to the principal's office. She walked in with her usual confidence, expecting a slap on the wrist for the gym incident. But what she found was something she never could have anticipated. Sitting behind the principal's desk was a tall, broad-shouldered man with dark skin and a stern expression. He looked up as Emily entered, his eyes narrowing. "Emily Carter," he said, his voice deep and commanding. "Have a seat." Emily hesitated. "Where's Principal Harris?" "Principal Harris retired last week," the man replied. "I'm the new principal. My name is Mr. Johnson." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Johnson. As in Aaliyah Johnson. Oh no. Emily sat in the chair across from Mr. Johnson's desk, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Her mind raced, trying to piece together how this could be happening. Aaliyah's father? The principal? No. This had to be some kind of joke. A cruel, twisted joke. Mr. Johnson leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp, piercing through Emily's facade like a laser. "Do you know why you're here, Emily?" Emily swallowed hard, her throat dry. Because of what happened in gym class?" "That's part of it," Mr. Johnson said, his tone calm but firm. "But this isn't the first incident involving you and my daughter, is it?" Emily's stomach dropped. "Your daughter?" "Yes," Mr. Johnson said, his voice steady. "Aaliyah is my daughter. And from what I've heard, you've been making her life here at Ridgewood difficult." Emily's mind scrambled for an excuse, a way to spin this in her favor. I didn't know she was your daughter. I mean, how was I supposed to know? She never said anything." "That's not the point," Mr. Johnson said, cutting her off. "The point is, you've been bullying her, spreading rumors, tripping her in gym class, making her feel unwelcome. Is that the kind of behavior we expect from a student at Ridgewood High?" Emily opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. She felt like a cornered animal, desperate for a way out, but finding none. Mr. Johnson leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving hers. "I'll be honest with you, Emily. When I took this job, I knew there would be challenges. But I didn't expect one of them to be my own daughter being targeted by a student. And not just any student, someone who's supposed to be a leader in this school." Emily's face burned with shame. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and never come back. But Mr. Johnson wasn't done. "Bullying is a serious issue," he continued. "It's not just about hurt feelings or a few spilled trays in the cafeteria. It's about power. It's about making someone feel small so you can feel big. And that's not acceptable. Not here. Not anywhere." Emily stared at her hands, unable to meet his gaze. She had never felt so small in her life. Meanwhile, Aaliyah was sitting outside the principal's office, her knee bandaged and her mind swirling with emotions. She had tried to stay strong, to brush off Emily's taunts and insults, but it was getting harder every day. She didn't want to cause trouble for her dad, especially since he was new to the school. But she also couldn't keep letting Emily walk all over her. The door to the office opened, and Emily stepped out, her face pale and her eyes downcast. She glanced at Aaliyah, but quickly looked away, as if she couldn't bear to meet her gaze. Aaliyah stood up, her heart pounding. "Emily." Emily stopped, but didn't turn around. "What?" Aaliyah took a deep breath. "I just want to know why. Why are you doing this?" Emily hesitated, her shoulders tense. "I don't know," she muttered. "I guess." I guess I just didn't like you. Because I'm new? Aaliyah asked. Because I'm black? Or just because you could? Emily didn't answer. She just stood there, her fists clenched at her sides. Aaliyah shook her head. You don't even know me. You don't know anything about me. But you decided to make me your target anyway. Do you have any idea how that feels? Emily's jaw tightened, but she still didn't respond. Aaliyah took a step closer, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I'm not going to let you bully me anymore. And if you try, I'll stand up to you, every time. Emily finally turned to face her, her eyes blazing with anger. You think you're so tough, don't you? Just because your dad's the principal now, you think you're untouchable. No, Aaliyah said firmly. I'm not untouchable. But I'm not going to let you or anyone else make me feel like I don't belong here. This is my school too. The two girls stared at each other, the tension between them palpable. For a moment, it seemed like Emily might say something, might apologize or back down. But instead, she just turned and walked away, her head held high, but her shoulders slumped in defeat. Back in the principal's office, Mr. Johnson sat at his desk, deep in thought. He knew this wasn't going to be an easy situation to resolve. Bullying was a complex issue, and it wasn't just about punishing the bully. It was about understanding why it happened in the first place and how to prevent it from happening.
He picked up the phone and dialed number. Mrs. Carter, this is Principal Johnson. I'd like to schedule a meeting with you and Emily to discuss her behavior at school. Yes, it's urgent. The next day, the school was buzzing with rumors. Everyone had heard about what happened in the principal's office, and everyone had an opinion. Some students sided with Emily, saying Aaliyah was overreacting. Others supported Aaliyah, saying it was about time someone stood up to Emily. But one thing was clear, the dynamic at Ridgewood High had shifted. The queen bee had been dethroned, and a new sense of accountability was in the air. The news of Emily's confrontation with Principal Johnson spread through Ridgewood High like wildfire. By lunchtime, everyone was talking about it. The cafeteria was abuzz with whispers, and Emily could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her as she walked in. For the first time in her high school career, she wasn't the one in control. She wasn't the one people admired or feared. She was the one they pitted, or worse, judged. Jessica, her once loyal best friend, was nowhere to be found. Emily scanned the room and spotted her sitting with a group of girls from the volleyball team, laughing and chatting as if nothing had happened. Emily's stomach churned. Was this what it felt like to be on the outside looking in? She grabbed a tray of food and sat down at an empty table, her appetite gone. She picked at her fries, her mind replaying the events of the past few days. The way Aaliyah had stood up to her, the way Principal Johnson had looked at her like she was some kind of disappointment, the way her own friends had abandoned her. For the first time, Emily felt truly alone. Meanwhile, Aaliyah was sitting with a group of students from her English class. They were asking her questions about what had happened, but she kept her answers vague. She didn't want to make things worse for Emily, but she also didn't want to pretend like everything was okay. Are you okay? One of the girls, Mia, asked. I heard Emily tripped you in gym class. That's so messed up. Aaliyah nodded. I'm fine. Just a scraped knee. But yeah, it was not great. Mia shook her head. Emily's always been like that. She thinks she can get away with anything because she's popular. But she's not untouchable. Aaliyah smiled faintly. I know. And I'm not going to let her or anyone else make me feel like I don't belong here. The group nodded in agreement. And for the first time since starting at Ridgewood, Aaliyah felt like she was part of something. Like she had friends who had her back. That afternoon, Emily was called to the principal's office again. This time, her mother was waiting for her. Mrs. Carter was a tall, elegant woman with the same blonde hair and sharp features as her daughter, but her expression was anything but elegant. She looked furious. Emily, she said as soon as Emily walked in. What on earth is going on? Principal Johnson told me everything. Bullying? Really? Emily sank into the chair next to her mother, her face burning with shame. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she mumbled. I was just, I don't know, trying to have some fun. Fun, Mrs. Carter repeated, her voice rising. Making someone else's life miserable is your idea of fun? Do you have any idea how disappointed I am in you right now? Emily's eyes filled with tears. She had never seen her mother this angry before. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't think. That's the problem, Mrs. Carter interrupted. You didn't think. You just acted, without any consideration for how your actions would affect others. Do you know what this could do to your future? Colleges don't look kindly on students with a history of bullying, Emily. Emily's stomach dropped. She hadn't even thought about that. What's going to happen to me? Principal Johnson, who had been quietly observing the conversation, finally spoke. Emily, bullying is a serious offense. Normally, this would result in suspension or even expulsion. But given that this is your first offense and you've shown some remorse, I'm willing to give you a second chance. Emily looked up at him, hope flickering in her eyes. Really? Yes, Mr. Johnson said. But there will be consequences. You'll be required to attend counseling sessions to address your behavior. You'll also need to complete community service hours and write a formal apology to Aaliyah. Emily nodded quickly. I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes. Mr. Johnson studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. I hope you mean that, Emily, because this is your chance to make things right. Don't waste it. Over the next few weeks, Emily began to change. She attended the counseling sessions, even though they were uncomfortable and forced her to confront parts of herself she didn't like. She completed her community service hours, volunteering at a local food bank and helping out at a youth center. And she wrote the apology letter to Aaliyah, pouring her heart into every word. The letter wasn't easy to write. Emily had to dig deep to really think about why she had acted the way she did. She realized that a lot of it came from insecurity, from the pressure to be perfect, to be popular, to be in control. But that didn't excuse her behavior. Nothing did. When she finally handed the letter to Aaliyah, she felt a mix of relief and anxiety. I know this doesn't make up for what I did, she said quietly. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Really sorry. Aaliyah took the letter and read it in silence. When she looked up, her expression was unreadable. Thank you, she said finally. I appreciate the apology, but it's going to take more than a letter to earn my trust. Emily nodded. I understand, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove that I've changed. Aaliyah studied her for a moment, then nodded. We'll see. As the weeks turned into months, Emily continued to work on herself. She started standing up to other students who were bullying or being mean, using her influence to make Ridgewood a better place. She even joined the school's anti-bullying committee, working alongside Aaliyah to create a safer, more inclusive environment for everyone. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks and challenges, and not everyone was quick to forgive her. But Emily was determined to prove that she was more than the girl she used to be. The air at Ridgewood High felt different now. The tension that had once hung over the school like a dark cloud had begun to lift, replaced by a sense of hope and renewal. Students who had once turned a blind eye to bullying were now speaking up, and the hallways felt safer kinder. It wasn't perfect, change never is, but it was progress. For Emily, the journey toward redemption was far from easy. She still carried the weight of her past actions, and not everyone was quick to forgive her. But she was determined to prove that she was more than the girl she used to be. She threw herself into her work with the anti-bullying committee, organizing workshops and awareness campaigns. She even started a mentorship program, pairing upperclassmen with freshmen to help them navigate the challenges of high school. Aaliyah, meanwhile, had become a respected leader in her own right. Her quiet strength and unwavering integrity had earned her the admiration of her peers, and she was no longer just the new girl. She was Aaliyah Johnson, someone who stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. The two girls hadn't become best friends. That would have been too much, too soon. But they had developed a mutual respect. They worked together on the anti-bullying committee, their interactions polite but professional. And slowly, over time, the walls between them began to come down. One afternoon, As they were setting up for an assembly on kindness and inclusion, Aaliyah turned to Emily and said, "You've changed." Emily paused, a stack of flyers in her hands. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're not the same person you were when I first got here," Aaliyah said. "You've put in the work. I can see that." Emily looked down at the flyers, her cheeks flushing. "I had to. I couldn't keep being that person. Not after everything." Aaliyah nodded. "I get that. Change isn't easy, but it's worth it." Emily met her gaze, her expression earnest. "I'm really sorry, Aaliyah, for everything. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know that I'm trying to be better." Aaliyah studied her for a moment, then smiled faintly. "I know, and for what it's worth, I think you're doing a good job." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. The assembly was a success. Students packed the auditorium, and the speakers, including Emily and Aaliyah, delivered powerful messages about the importance of kindness, empathy, and standing up for others. When Emily took the stage, her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "I used to think that being popular meant being powerful," she said, looking out at the sea of faces. "But I was wrong. Real power isn't about putting others down. It's about lifting them up. It's about using your voice to make a difference, even when it's hard. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm here today to say that it's never too late to change. It's never too late to be better." The room erupted into applause, and Emily felt a lump form in her throat. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. After the assembly, Aaliyah found Emily backstage. "You did good up there," she said. Emily smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Thanks. That means a lot coming from you." Aaliyah hesitated, then said, "You know, I used to think you were just this mean girl who didn't care about anyone but herself. But I was wrong. You're more than that. And I think you're starting to see that too." Emily nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Yeah, I think I am." As the school year drew to a close, Ridgewood High felt like a different place. The students were more united, more aware of the impact their words and actions could have. And Emily and Aaliyah, while not friends, had developed a bond forged through shared experiences and mutual growth. On the last day of school, as they stood side by side at the senior farewell ceremony, Aaliyah turned to Emily and said, "You know, next year's going to be our last year here. We should make it count." Emily smiled. "Yeah, we should." And for the first time, they both believed it. Epilogue. 1 year later, Emily stood at the podium, her cap and gown a stark contrast to the sea of faces in the audience. She had been chosen as one of the student speakers for Ridgewood High's graduation ceremony, and as she looked out at her classmates, she felt a surge of pride, not just for herself, but for how far they had all come. "High school is a journey," she began, her voice clear and confident. "It's a time of growth, of discovery, of making mistakes and learning from them. I know that better than anyone. But it's also a time of second chances, a time to become the person you were always meant to be." She paused, her eyes finding Aaliyah in the crowd. Aaliyah smiled and gave her a small nod, and Emily felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. "So as we move on to the next chapter of our lives," Emily continued, "let's remember the lessons we've learned here. Let's remember to be kind, to be brave, and to always stand up for what's right. Because that's what really matters. That's what makes us who we are." The audience erupted into applause, and as Emily stepped down from the podium, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. She had come a long way from the girl she used to be, and she was proud of the person she had become. And as she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she knew that this was just the beginning. The summer before senior year was a turning point for Emily and Aaliyah. With the weight of their past slowly lifting, they found themselves crossing paths more often, not just at school events, but in unexpected ways. One afternoon, they ran into each other at the local library, both there to volunteer for a community reading program. "Hey," Aaliyah said, surprised but not unkind. "Didn't expect to see you here." Emily smiled nervously. "Yeah, I've been trying to, get more involved. What about you?" "Same," Aaliyah replied. "I've always loved reading, so this seemed like a good fit." They ended up working together, helping kids pick out books and reading aloud to them. It was awkward at first. Emily still felt the sting of guilt whenever she looked at Aaliyah. But as the hours passed, the tension began to ease. By the end of the day, they were laughing together over a group of kids who insisted on hearing the same dinosaur story 3 times in a row. "You're good with them," Aaliyah said as they packed up. "The kids, you have a way of making them feel comfortable." Emily shrugged, a little embarrassed. "Thanks. I guess I don't know. I like making people smile now. It feels better than the alternative." Aaliyah studied her for a moment, then nodded. "It does." Over the next few weeks, they started spending more time together. It wasn't planned, just small moments here and there, like grabbing coffee after a committee meeting or studying together in the library. Slowly, they began to open up to each other, sharing stories about their families, their dreams, and their fears. One evening, as they sat on the steps outside the school after a late meeting, Aaliyah asked, "Do you ever think about what happened? Like how things might have been different if we hadn't, "All the time," Emily admitted. "I think about it every day. How I treated you, how I treated so many people. I wish I could go back and change it, but I can't. All I can do is try to be better now." Aaliyah nodded. "I get that. And for what it's worth, I think you are. Better, Emily looked at her, surprised. "Really? Yeah," Aaliyah said with a small smile. "You're not the same person you were back then, and neither am I. I think we've both grown a lot." Emily felt a lump form in her throat. "Thanks, Aaliyah. That means a lot." Senior year brought its own set of challenges. College applications, scholarship essays, and the pressure to make every moment count weighed heavily on both girls. Emily, who had once been so confident about her future, now found herself questioning everything. She wanted to study psychology, to help others who struggled with the same insecurities and pressures she had faced. But the fear of rejection held her back. Aaliyah, on the other hand, was determined to pursue her dream of becoming a journalist. She had already been accepted to several schools, but she was waiting to hear back from her top choice, a prestigious university with a renowned journalism program. One afternoon, as they sat in the cafeteria poring over college brochures, Emily sighed. "I don't know if I can do this. What if I don't get in anywhere? What if I'm not good enough?" Aaliyah looked up from her laptop. "You're good enough, Emily. You've worked so hard this past year. Don't let fear stop you now." Emily smiled faintly. "When did you get so wise?" Aaliyah laughed. "I've always been wise. You just didn't notice before." They both laughed, and for a moment, the weight of their worries felt a little lighter. As the year went on, they leaned on each other more and more. When Emily got her first college acceptance letter, Aaliyah was the first person she told. And when Aaliyah finally heard back from her dream school, she got in. Emily was there to celebrate with her. "I knew you could do it," Emily said, hugging her tightly. "You're going to be an amazing journalist." Aaliyah grinned. "And you're going to be an amazing psychologist. We're going to change the world, Emily. Just wait and see." Graduation day arrived, and with it, a sense of closure and new beginnings. As Emily and Aaliyah stood side by side in their caps and gowns, they couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come. "Can you believe it?" Emily said, adjusting her tassel. "We made it." "We did," Aaliyah replied, "and we're better for it." When their names were called, they walked across the stage together, their smiles bright and their futures full of promise. After the ceremony, they found each other in the crowd, their families cheering them on. "So," Aaliyah said, holding out her hand, "partners in crime." Emily laughed and shook her hand. Partners in crime. Years later, they would look back on that moment as the start of a lifelong friendship. Emily went on to study psychology, using her experiences to help others overcome their struggles. Aaliyah became a journalist, telling stories that inspired change and gave a voice to the voiceless. They didn't see each other often. Life had a way of pulling people in different directions, but they always stayed in touch. And whenever they did meet, whether for coffee or a quick phone call, they were reminded of the journey that had brought them together. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. Because in the end, they had both found what they were looking for: redemption, friendship, and the courage to be themselves. Emily's first year of college was a whirlwind of new experiences. She had chosen a university known for its strong psychology program, and while she was excited, she also felt the weight of imposter syndrome. The fear of not being good enough still lingered, but she reminded herself of how far she'd come. She joined a peer support group on campus, where she found comfort in helping others who were struggling with their own insecurities. One evening, after a particularly tough day, she called Aaliyah. "I don't know if I can do this," Emily admitted, her voice trembling. "Everyone here is so smart, so confident. I feel like I don't belong." "You do belong," Aaliyah said firmly. "You've worked so hard to get here, Emily. Don't let fear take that away from you. And remember, it's okay to ask for help. You're not in this alone." Emily smiled through her tears. "Thanks, Aaliyah. I needed to hear that." Meanwhile, Aaliyah was thriving in her journalism program. She had landed an internship at a local newspaper, where she was quickly making a name for herself as a talented writer with a knack for uncovering important stories. But the pressure to succeed was intense, and she often found herself working late into the night. One day, after pulling an all-nighter to meet a deadline, she received a text from Emily. "Hey, just checking in. How are you holding up?" Aaliyah smiled and replied, "Alive. Barely. How about you?" They ended up talking for hours, swapping stories about their classes, their dreams, and the challenges they were facing. It was moments like these that reminded them of how much they needed each other, even from a distance. After college, Emily moved back to their hometown to work as a counselor at a local high school. She wanted to give back to the community that had shaped her, and she found fulfillment in helping students navigate the same struggles she had faced. Her past experiences gave her a unique perspective, and she quickly became a trusted mentor to many of her students. One day, she received a call from Aaliyah, who was now working as an investigative journalist in a nearby city. "I'm working on a story about bullying in schools," Aaliyah said. "I was wondering if you'd be willing to share your experiences. I think it could really make an impact." Emily hesitated. Talking about her past was still difficult, but she knew how important it was to raise awareness. "Okay," she said finally. "Let's do it." The article, titled "From Bully to Advocate: One Woman's Journey to Redemption," was published a few weeks later. It was raw, honest, and deeply moving, and it sparked a nationwide conversation about the lasting effects of bullying and the power of second chances. Aaliyah's career continued to soar, but her personal life wasn't without its challenges. She struggled with balancing her demanding job and her relationships, often feeling like she was spread too thin. During one particularly difficult period, she reached out to Emily. "I don't know how to do it all," Aaliyah confessed. "Work, family, friends, it feels like I'm failing at everything." "You're not failing," Emily reassured her. "You're just human, and it's okay to ask for help. Remember, you don't have to do it all alone." Aaliyah took her advice, learning to delegate and prioritize self-care. It wasn't easy, but with Emily's support, she found a way to navigate the challenges of adulthood. Years passed, and Emily and Aaliyah's friendship only grew stronger. They celebrated each other's successes: Emily's promotion to head counselor, Aaliyah's Pulitzer Prize nomination, and supported each other through the tough times: Emily's divorce, Aaliyah's struggles with burnout. One summer, they decided to take a trip together, just the two of them. They rented a cabin by a lake, where they spent their days hiking, kayaking, and reminiscing about the past. "Can you believe how far we've come?" Emily said one evening as they sat by the fire. "From high school bullies and victims to this." Aaliyah smiled. "It's pretty amazing, isn't it? I think we've both grown a lot." "We have," Emily agreed. "And I'm so grateful for you, Aaliyah. I don't know where I'd be without your friendship." "Same here," Aaliyah said. "You've been my rock through everything, and I know you'll continue to be." They sat in comfortable silence, the crackling fire and the sounds of the lake filling the air. In that moment, they were reminded of the journey that had brought them together, a journey of pain, growth, and ultimately, redemption. Epilogue: A legacy of change. Years later, Emily and Aaliyah co-authored a book about their experiences, titled Asterisk, From Adversity to Allyship, a story of redemption and resilience. Asterisk, it became a bestseller, inspiring countless readers to confront their own pasts and strive for a better future. They also started a nonprofit organization dedicated to combating bullying and promoting kindness in schools. Their work touched the lives of thousands of students, proving that change was possible. One person, one story, one act of kindness at a time. As they stood on stage at a national conference, addressing a crowd of educators, parents, and students, Emily looked out at the sea of faces and felt a surge of pride. "We've come a long way," she said, her voice steady and strong. "But there's still so much work to be done. Together, we can create a world where no one has to feel alone, where everyone has the chance to be their best selves." Aaliyah nodded, taking the microphone. "And it starts with us. With our words, our actions, and our willingness to change. Thank you for believing in us, and for believing in the power of second chances." The audience erupted into applause, and as Emily and Aaliyah stepped off the stage, they knew that their journey was far from over. But they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. Emily and Aaliyah's nonprofit, Second Chances, quickly gained traction. Their story resonated with people across the country, and they were invited to speak at schools, conferences, and even on national television. But as the organization grew, so did the challenges. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Emily sighed as she slumped into a chair in their small office. "I didn't think it would be this hard," she admitted. "There's so much to do: fundraising, outreach, managing volunteers. Sometimes I feel like we're in over our heads." Aaliyah nodded, pouring them both a cup of coffee. "I know what you mean, but we've faced worse, right? And we've always figured it out. Together." Emily smiled faintly. "Yeah, together." They spent the next few months refining their strategy, leaning on each other's strengths. Emily's background in psychology helped them develop effective anti-bullying programs, while Aaliyah's journalism skills ensured their message reached a wide audience. Slowly but surely, Second Chances began to make a real impact. One of their proudest moments came when they received a letter from a high school student named Mia. "Your story changed my life," Mia wrote. Asterisk, "I used to think I was alone, but now I know there's hope. Thank you for giving me a second chance." Asterisk. Emily read the letter aloud at their next board meeting, her voice breaking with emotion. "This is why we do what we do," she said. "For Mia. For every kid who feels like they don't belong." As their nonprofit flourished, Emily and Aaliyah's personal lives continued to evolve. Emily reconnected with an old college friend, Mark, and they began dating. It was a slow, steady relationship, one built on trust and mutual respect. Aaliyah, meanwhile, decided to adopt a child on her own, fulfilling a lifelong dream of becoming a mother. When Aaliyah brought her daughter, Layla, home for the first time, Emily was there to help. "She's perfect," Emily said, tears in her eyes as she held the baby. "You're going to be an amazing mom, Aaliyah." Aaliyah smiled, exhaustion and joy mingling on her face. "I hope so, but I'm going to need a lot of help. You're basically her aunt, you know." Emily laughed. "I wouldn't have it any other way." But life wasn't without its hardships. A few years later, Emily's father passed away unexpectedly. It was a devastating loss, and Emily struggled to cope. Aaliyah dropped everything to be by her side, helping her through the grief. "I don't know what I'd do without you," Emily said one night, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've always been there for me, even when I didn't deserve it." Aaliyah squeezed her hand. "That's what friends are for. We're family, Emily. Always have been, always will be." By the time they reached their 40s, Emily and Aaliyah had built a legacy that extended far beyond their nonprofit. They had become symbols of resilience and redemption, inspiring countless people to confront their pasts and strive for a better future. One of their proudest achievements was the creation of a Second Chances Scholarship, which provided financial support to students who had overcome adversity. The first recipient, a young man named Jordan, had been bullied throughout high school, but had gone on to become a passionate advocate for mental health. At the scholarship ceremony, Jordan stood at the podium, his voice steady but emotional. "Emily and Aaliyah, you've shown me that it's never too late to change, to grow, to make a difference. Thank you for believing in me, and for giving me the chance to believe in myself." Emily and Aaliyah sat in the audience, tears streaming down their faces. "We did it," Emily whispered. "We really did it." Aaliyah nodded, her heart full. "And we're just getting started." Years later, as they sat on the porch of a lake cabin they now owned together, Emily and Aaliyah reflected on their journey. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the water, and the air was filled with the sounds of laughter. Layla and Emily's son, Jake, were playing by the shore. "Can you believe this is our life?" Emily said, a smile tugging at her lips. "All those years ago, I never could have imagined we'd end up here." Aaliyah leaned back in her chair, her eyes on the horizon. "Me neither. But I'm glad we did. We've built something amazing, Emily. Together." Emily reached over and squeezed her hand. Together. As they sat there, watching their children play and the sun dip below the horizon, they were reminded of the power of second chances and the enduring strength of a friendship that had weathered every storm. By the time Emily and Aaliyah reached their 50s, Second Chances had grown into a global movement. What had started as a small nonprofit in their hometown now had chapters in over 20 countries, each one dedicated to combating bullying and promoting kindness in schools. Their story had inspired millions, and they were frequently invited to speak at international conferences and events. One such event was the Global Education Summit in Geneva, where they were asked to deliver the keynote address. As they stood on stage, looking out at the sea of faces from around the world, Emily felt a surge of pride. "When we started this journey," she began, her voice steady and strong, "we never imagined it would take us here. But we've learned that change is possible, no matter where you come from or what you've been through." Aaliyah stepped forward, her presence commanding the room. "Our mission has always been about more than just stopping bullying. It's about creating a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued. A world where second chances aren't just possible, they're expected." The audience erupted into applause, and as they left the stage, Emily and Aaliyah felt a renewed sense of purpose. But with growth came new challenges. Managing a global organization was no small feat, and they often found themselves stretched thin. One evening, after a particularly grueling week of back-to-back meetings, Emily sighed as she collapsed onto the couch in their shared office. "I don't know how much longer I can keep up this pace," she admitted. "I feel like I'm running on empty." Aaliyah sat down beside her, her expression thoughtful. "Maybe it's time we start thinking about the next generation. We've built something incredible, but we can't do it forever. We need to start training others to take the reins." Emily nodded, the weight of her exhaustion mingling with a sense of relief. "You're right. It's time to pass the torch." Over the next few years, Emily and Aaliyah focused on mentoring a new generation of leaders. They identified passionate individuals within their organization and provided them with the tools and support they needed to succeed. One of their most promising mentors was a young woman named Sophia, who had been a beneficiary of their scholarship program. Sophia had overcome incredible adversity in her life, including years of bullying and homelessness. But with the help of Second Chances, she had gone on to earn a degree in social work and was now determined to pay it forward. "You remind me so much of myself," Emily told Sophia one day during a mentoring session. "You have this fire in you, this drive to make a difference. Don't ever let anyone extinguish that." Sophia smiled, her eyes shining with determination. "I won't. And I'll make you proud, Emily. Both of you." Aaliyah placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder. "You already have." As they gradually stepped back from their day-to-day roles, Emily and Aaliyah found themselves with more time to focus on their personal lives. Emily and Mark decided to retire early, moving to a small coastal town where they spent their days gardening, hiking, and volunteering at a local community center. Aaliyah, meanwhile, continued to write, publishing a memoir about her journey from bullied student to global advocate. The book, titled From Shadows to Light, became a bestseller and was adapted into a documentary that further amplified their message. But even in their semi-retirement, Emily and Aaliyah remained deeply involved in Second Chances. They served as advisors, offering guidance and support to the new leadership team. And they continue to travel, speaking at events and inspiring others with their story. As they entered their 60s, Emily and Aaliyah began to reflect on the legacy they would leave behind. They had accomplished so much, but there was still more to do. One of their final projects was the creation of the Second Chances Foundation, a global fund dedicated to supporting anti-bullying initiatives and mental health programs. At the launch event, held at their alma mater, Ridgewood High, Emily and Aaliyah stood on stage together one last time. The auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and community members, all eager to hear their message. "When we were students here," Emily began, her voice filled with emotion, "we never could have imagined the journey we would take. But we've learned that it's never too late to change, to grow, to make a difference." Aaliyah stepped forward, her eyes scanning the crowd. "And now it's your turn. Each of you has the power to create change in your schools, your communities, and the world. Don't wait for someone else to do it. Be the change you wish to see." The audience erupted into applause, and as they left the stage, Emily and Aaliyah felt a profound sense of fulfillment. They had come full circle, returning to the place where their journey had begun, and they knew their work would continue long after they were gone. Years later, as they sat on the porch of a lake cabin they now owned together, Emily and Aaliyah reflected on their journey. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the water, and the air was filled with the sounds of laughter. Layla and Emily's grandchildren were playing by the shore. "Can you believe this is our life?" Emily said, a smile tugging at her lips. "All those years ago, I never could have imagined we'd end up here." Aaliyah leaned back in her chair, her eyes on the horizon. "Me, neither. But I'm glad we did. We've built something amazing, Emily. Together." Emily reached over and squeezed her hand. Together. As they sat there, watching their grandchildren play and the sun dip below the horizon, they were reminded of the power of second chances and the enduring strength of a friendship that had weathered every storm. In their final years, Emily and Aaliyah focused on documenting their journey for future generations. They worked with historians and archivists to create a comprehensive record of their work, ensuring that their story would continue to inspire long after they were gone. They also established the Emily and Aaliyah Leadership Institute, a training center for young activists and advocates. The institute became a hub for innovation and collaboration, bringing together people from around the world to share ideas and strategies for creating a kinder, more inclusive society. When Emily passed away at the age of 78, surrounded by her family and friends, the world mourned the loss of a true champion for change. But her legacy lived on, in the countless lives she had touched, the programs she had created, and the movement she had helped build. Aaliyah, though heartbroken, found solace in the knowledge that their work would continue. She spent her final years traveling, speaking, and writing, determined to honor Emily's memory and carry their mission forward. When Aaliyah passed away a few years later, the world lost another icon. But their story, their friendship, their resilience, their unwavering commitment to making the world a better place, lived on. Years after their passing, the world was a different place. Bullying was no longer tolerated in schools, and kindness had become the norm. The Second Chances Foundation had grown into a global force for good, funding thousands of initiatives and touching millions of lives. And in schools around the world, students learned about Emily and Aaliyah, two ordinary women who had done extraordinary things. Their story was taught in classrooms, celebrated in books and films, and remembered as a testament to the power of second chances. As the sun set on another day, a young girl named Mia stood in front of a mural of Emily and Aaliyah, her heart full of hope. She had been bullied once, but thanks to their legacy, she knew she wasn't alone. She knew she had the power to change her story and the world. And as she walked away, her head held high, she whispered two words that would echo through the ages. "Thank you." Years after Emily and Aaliyah's passing, The Second Chances Foundation had become a cornerstone of global education and mental health initiatives. Their programs were implemented in schools across 6 continents, and their message of kindness and resilience had become a universal language. The Foundation's annual Global Kindness Summit brought together educators, policymakers, and activists from around the world to share strategies and celebrate progress. One such summit was held in Cape Town, South Africa, where a young educator named Thandai stood on stage to share her story. "I grew up in a township where bullying was a daily reality," she began, her voice steady but emotional. "But thanks to the Second Chances program, I learned that I had the power to change my story. Now, I'm teaching my students to do the same." The audience erupted into applause, and as Thandai left the stage, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had never met Emily or Aaliyah, but their legacy had changed her life and the lives of countless others. Back in the United States, the Emily and Aaliyah Leadership Institute was thriving. The institute had become a hub for innovation, offering training programs for young activists and advocates. One of its most successful initiatives was the Kindness Ambassadors program, which empowered students to lead anti-bullying campaigns in their schools. One such ambassador was a high school senior named Carlos, who had been inspired by Emily and Aaliyah's story. "I used to think I was powerless," he said during a training session. "But now I know that even one person can make a difference, and together we can change the world." Emily and Aaliyah's families continued to honor their legacy in their own ways. Emily's daughter, Sarah, had followed in her mother's footsteps, becoming a psychologist specializing in trauma recovery. She often spoke about her mother's influence, both in her work and in her personal life. "My mom taught me that it's never too late to change," Sarah said during a keynote address at a mental health conference, "and that no matter how dark things may seem, there's always hope." Aaliyah's daughter, Layla, had become a journalist like her mother, focusing on stories of resilience and redemption. She had recently published a book about her mother's life, titled Asterisk, From Shadows to Light, the Aaliyah Johnson story. Asterisk, the book, became an instant bestseller, introducing a new generation to Aaliyah's journey. "My mom always said that stories have the power to change the world," Layla said during a book signing event. "And she was right. Her story changed mine, and I hope it changes yours too." The two families remained close, often gathering at the lake cabin that Emily and Aaliyah had loved so much. It had become a place of healing and connection, a reminder of the enduring power of their friendship. One summer evening, as they sat around a bonfire, Sarah turned to Layla. "Do you ever wonder what they'd think of all this? Everything we've done, everything we've become?" Layla smiled, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "I think they'd be proud, not just of us, but of the world they helped create. A world where kindness matters and second chances are possible." Sarah nodded, her heart full. "Yeah, I think they would." As the years passed, Emily and Aaliyah's story became a timeless tale of resilience, redemption, and the power of friendship. It was taught in schools, celebrated in books and films, and remembered as a testament to the enduring impact of one act of kindness. One such celebration was the unveiling of a statue in their honor, erected in the heart of their hometown. The statue depicted Emily and Aaliyah standing side by side, their arms around each other, their faces filled with determination and hope. At the unveiling ceremony, the mayor stood before the crowd, her voice filled with emotion. "Emily and Aaliyah showed us that it's never too late to change, to grow, to make a difference. Their legacy lives on in every act of kindness, every second chance, every life they touched." As the statue was unveiled, the crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing through the streets. And as the sun set, casting a golden glow over the statue, it was clear that Emily and Aaliyah's legacy would endure for generations to come. Years later, as the world continued to evolve, the principles that Emily and Aaliyah had championed remained steadfast. Kindness, empathy, and second chances were no longer just ideals. They were the foundation of a better world. And in schools around the globe, students learned about two ordinary women who had done extraordinary things. Their story was a reminder that no matter how dark things may seem, there's always hope. That no matter how far we may fall, we can always rise again. As the sun set on another day, a young girl named Mia stood in front of the statue of Emily and Aaliyah, her heart full of hope. She had been bullied once, but thanks to their legacy, she knew she wasn't alone. She knew she had the power to change her story and the world. And as she walked away, her head held high, she whispered 2 words that would echo through the ages. Thank you. Decades after Emily and Aaliyah's passing, their legacy continued to thrive through the work of a new generation of advocates. The Second Chances Foundation had become a global powerhouse, but it faced new challenges in an ever-changing world. Cyberbullying, social media pressures, and mental health crises among youth were on the rise, and the foundation had to adapt to meet these modern challenges. One of the rising stars within the foundation was a young woman named Priya, who had been inspired by Emily and Aaliyah's story as a child. Priya had grown up in India, where she had faced severe bullying for her unconventional career aspirations. After discovering Second Chances online, she had become a kindness ambassador and later joined the foundation as a program director. At a global conference on digital wellness, Priya stood on stage, her voice steady but passionate. Emily and Aaliyah taught us that kindness is a universal language, she said. But in today's digital age, we need to redefine what kindness looks like. It's not just about what we say or do in person. It's about how we treat each other online, too. Her speech resonated deeply with the audience, sparking a wave of new initiatives aimed at combating cyberbullying and promoting digital empathy. Priya became a leading voice in the movement, carrying forward the torch that Emily and Aaliyah had lit so many years ago. Meanwhile, in the United States, the Emily and Aaliyah Leadership Institute was training a new cohort of young activists. Among them was a high school student named Malik, who had been inspired by Aaliyah's memoir. Malik had experienced bullying for his identity as a transgender teen, but he had found strength in the stories of resilience shared by Emily and Aaliyah. Their story showed me that I'm not alone, Malik said during a workshop, and that my voice matters. I want to use my voice to help others like me feel seen and valued. Malik's passion and determination made him a natural leader, and he quickly became a key figure in the Institute's efforts to promote inclusivity and acceptance. As the foundation and institute continued to grow, they faced new challenges. Funding shortages, political resistance, and burnout among staff were constant hurdles. But the spirit of Emily and Aaliyah's mission, their unwavering belief in the power of second chances, kept the movement alive. One of the most significant challenges came when a controversial politician attempted to cut funding for anti-bullying programs in schools. The foundation launched a massive advocacy campaign, mobilizing supporters around the world to speak out against the cuts. Priya, now a seasoned advocate, led the charge. "This isn't just about funding," she said during a press conference. "This is about the lives of millions of children who deserve to feel safe and valued. We cannot let their voices be silenced." The campaign was a success, and the funding was restored. But the victory was bittersweet, a reminder of the ongoing fight for kindness and justice. At the same time, the Institute faced its own struggles. Malik, now a college student, found himself grappling with the weight of his activism. "Sometimes it feels like the world is too broken to fix," he confessed during a mentoring session with Sarah, Emily's daughter. Sarah nodded, her expression understanding. "I know how you feel. My mom used to say that change doesn't happen overnight. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And you don't have to run it alone." Her words gave Malik the strength to keep going, and he continued to lead initiatives that made a tangible difference in his community. As the years passed, Emily and Aaliyah's story continued to inspire new generations. Their lives were the subject of documentaries, books, and even a Broadway musical titled Second Chances. The musical, which premiered to critical acclaim, brought their story to life in a way that resonated with audiences of all ages. At the opening night performance, Sarah and Layla sat in the front row, their hearts full as they watched their mother's journey unfold on stage. "They would have loved this," Sarah whispered, tears in her eyes. Layla nodded, squeezing her hand. They're here. I can feel it. The musical's final number, We Rise Together, became an anthem for the movement, a reminder that no matter how far we may fall, we can always rise again. Years later, as the world continued to evolve, the principles that Emily and Aaliyah had championed remained steadfast. Kindness, empathy, and second chances were no longer just ideals. They were the foundation of a better world. And in schools around the globe, students learned about two ordinary women who had done extraordinary things. Their story was a reminder that no matter how dark things may seem, there's always hope. That no matter how far we may fall, we can always rise again. As the sun set on another day, a young girl named Mia stood in front of the statue of Emily and Aaliyah, her heart full of hope. She had been bullied once, but thanks to their legacy, she knew she wasn't alone. She knew she had the power to change her story and the world. And as she walked away, her head held high, she whispered two words that would echo through the ages. Thank you.